You're watching a disturbing story about people who've committed heinous crimes and are currently living among us, often right next door or down the street. It's estimated that over 2 million sex offenders are registered in the United States alone, with numbers increasing every year. According to the National Institute of Justice, nearly half of these offenders have been convicted of a crime against a child. In fact, it's not uncommon for convicted murderers and rapists to reintegrate into their communities after serving a prison sentence. Research suggests that the recidivism rate for sex offenders is staggering. Between 50% and 90% are rearrested within just 5 years of release. Consider the case of Dennis Rader, also known as the BTK killer or bind, torture, kill. He was a regular guy from Park City, Kansas who led a double life. By day, he'd attend church and participate in community activities. By night, he'd abduct, rape, and murder young women. Over the course of 30 years, Rader claimed 5 lives and terrorized the entire community before being caught in 2005. The FBI investigation into Rader's crimes revealed a pattern of careful planning and manipulation. He would often pose as an authority figure to gain his victims' trust, then use this leverage to lure them back to his home where he'd tie them up and subject them to unimaginable torture. The fact that Rader was able to hide in plain sight for so long has left many experts questioning the effectiveness of current sex offender management policies. The ease with which some offenders are able to reintegrate into society raises important questions about our system's ability to rehabilitate and monitor these individuals. For instance, studies have shown that residential treatment programs have a significantly lower recidivism rate than community-based programs. One such program is the Sex Offender Treatment Program, SOTP, in the United Kingdom. The program, which was introduced in 1999, involves intensive counseling and therapy designed to help participants manage their deviant thoughts and behaviors. But critics argue that SOTP's effectiveness has been overstated. Some research suggests that the recidivism rate remains high even after completing treatment. Meanwhile, a disturbing trend is emerging. Sex offenders are increasingly using online platforms to groom and exploit their victims. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children reported over 18 million child exploitation reports in 2020 alone. It's no wonder then that law enforcement agencies across the globe are struggling to keep pace with these evolving threats. Let's take a closer look at some of the most egregious examples of sex offenders who've managed to evade detection and continue their crimes from within our midst. Meet Pedro Lopez, one of the most prolific serial killers in recorded history, responsible for the murders of over 300 young girls between 1969 and 1980. Lopez's background is that of a seemingly ordinary individual born in Colombia to an illiterate mother. He was largely raised by his grandmother before being institutionalized at the age of 12. However, it wasn't until Lopez was in his late teens that he began committing crimes, initially small thefts and assaults, but eventually escalating to rape and murder. When caught by Colombian authorities in 1980, Lopez confessed to over 300 murders, though many experts believe this number may be inflated. What's particularly chilling about Lopez's case is the way in which he blended into his surroundings, often targeting vulnerable children in small towns across Latin America. By exploiting these children's naivety and trusting nature, Lopez was able to carry out his atrocities without arousing suspicion for years. One of the most disturbing aspects of Lopez's case is the apparent lack of intervention or support during his formative years, a glaring example of how societal failures can contribute to the creation of future serial killers. His story highlights the need for more robust prevention programs and early interventions aimed at addressing underlying issues before they escalate into violent behavior. Consider the case of Dennis Hastert, former U.S. House Speaker from Illinois. In 2015, Hastert was convicted of structuring over $1 million in cash withdrawals to evade federal reporting requirements, a crime he ultimately admitted was part of a larger scheme to pay off hush money related to decades-old molestation allegations. What makes Hastert's case particularly egregious is the fact that he used his position as a trusted public figure to exploit and silence young victims. His actions sent shockwaves through Washington, D.C., raising questions about how someone with such a powerful platform could be allowed to hide in plain sight for so long. Hastert's story has sparked renewed calls for greater accountability among politicians and other high-profile figures accused of child abuse or exploitation. The case also underscores the need for more comprehensive background checks and screening processes for individuals holding positions of authority over vulnerable populations. As we continue our exploration of the unassuming sex offender, it becomes clear that their ability to hide in plain sight is often facilitated by societal apathy and a lack of adequate resources dedicated to prevention and support services. By failing to acknowledge these issues, we risk allowing predators like Lopez and Hastert to remain undetected for years. The rise of online platforms has created new challenges in the fight against sex offenders. Many now use social media to groom and exploit their victims. The case of Gary David Kay is a stark example of this trend. In 2017, Kay was convicted of child pornography charges after authorities discovered he'd been using his Facebook profile to solicit explicit images from minors. What's disturbing about Kay's case is the way in which he manipulated his online presence to create the illusion of a trustworthy authority figure, exploiting his victims' trust and naivety to satisfy his deviant desires. His actions demonstrate the ease with which sex offenders can hide behind digital masks, using social media to evade detection and continue their crimes. The proliferation of these online predators has led experts to call for greater regulation and oversight of social media platforms, arguing that companies must take responsibility for policing their users' behavior and providing adequate support services for victims. However, critics argue that such measures may be overly restrictive or stifle free speech. As we delve deeper into the world of unassuming sex offenders, it becomes clear that this is an issue that demands comprehensive solutions, rather than piecemeal fixes. Despite growing awareness about the risks associated with reintegration programs for sex offenders, many jurisdictions still struggle to balance public safety concerns with rehabilitation goals. The case of Robert Pickton, a Canadian serial killer convicted of murdering 6 sex workers in British Columbia, highlights the complexities surrounding this issue. Pickton was eventually caught in 2001 after a lengthy investigation involving multiple authorities and agencies. However, it's worth noting that he'd been on the radar of law enforcement for years prior to his arrest, with many warning signs suggesting he might be involved in organized crime or human trafficking. What makes Pickton's case so chilling is the fact that he managed to evade detection despite repeated interactions with police and social services. This raises questions about the efficacy of current support systems aimed at preventing recidivism among sex offenders. In recent years, there have been efforts to develop more targeted reintegration programs, often incorporating intensive therapy and counseling components designed to address underlying issues driving deviant behavior. However, critics argue that these initiatives are often underfunded or lack proper evaluation mechanisms, making it difficult to assess their long-term impact. As we move forward in our understanding of unassuming sex offenders, several key takeaways emerge: the need for more robust prevention programs, better support services for victims, and a re-evaluation of current policies governing reintegration. One potential solution lies in implementing community-based initiatives that provide wraparound services to address underlying issues driving deviant behavior. This might include collaboration between law enforcement agencies, social services, mental health professionals, and community leaders. However, any meaningful reform must also consider the broader societal context, including systemic failures that contribute to the creation of future sex offenders. By acknowledging these complexities and working towards comprehensive solutions, we may yet hope to prevent such atrocities from occurring in our midst once more. In conclusion, this exploration has only scratched the surface of a complex issue, one that demands continued research, discussion, and debate.